Let's shift our attention to theaters because AMC is now looking to usher in a new normal in the state of New York. The company planning to reopen its movie theaters this week with limited capacity in the state. And Sibile Marcellus is following that story for us. And Sibile, we've seen big moves for AMC on the back of this announcement. That stock up as much as 20% in the session.
That's right. I looked just a couple seconds ago, Akiko, and it actually is still up 15%. So AMC investors very happy with this news. So what the company said is that this week they're going to be opening more movie theaters, specifically in New York on Friday, about a dozen. And eventually they're going to have about more than 530 movie theaters open. So this is great news for investors because they've been hearing so much when it comes to those big movie studios. They're delaying all these big blockbusters. So how do you get people to come to the movie theater? So obviously that's been impacting their business. AMC's shares year to date are down more than 50%. What we're seeing is that when it comes to the smaller, mid-sized movie theater owners, they're really struggling. And some of them are saying they don't think they'll be able to reopen because of the pandemic.
And Sibile, while we're talking about struggles here in the U.S., some positive news out of China, perhaps, at least for these theater or these movie theater companies. We saw China surpassing the U.S. in terms of box office sales. This is something that was expected at the beginning of the year, but how does that help a company like AMC and some of these other theaters that have been struggling here in the U.S.?
Right. So what we're seeing with the coronavirus pandemic, China has overtaken the US, North America, in terms of box office sales. So when you look at the numbers, so China's box office has grown to just a little bit short of $2 billion in 2020. So by this time this year, we're looking at 1.94 billion for the US versus 1.98 billion for China. If you want to compare that to what happened last year in 2019, we saw that North America box office sales in the US were about 11.4 billion compared to China that was 9.2 billion. So what we're seeing here, Akiko, is a big impact of the coronavirus pandemic as we're seeing major blockbusters having to be delayed. And we're seeing also Americans apprehensive about sitting in a movie theater wearing a mask and, eating your popcorn and you're worrying about, being safe and washing your hands and your hand sanitizer and everything.
Yeah, so many steps to get to the movie theater, right? It's going to be interesting, especially here in New York, to see how many moviegoers actually return to the theaters when AMC reopens its theaters later this week. Thanks for that, Sibile.